All right, let's look at an upcoming event. Rhodes University and the Government Department of Social Development are to co-host an international conference on abortion and reproductive justice. It's taking place from Sunday until next Thursday in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape. Well, in 1997, Parliament here enacted the Choice on Termination of Pregnancy Act, which placed an obligation on government to provide safe conditions for abortions where the right to choice can be exercised without fear or harm. In a report last year, however, Amnesty International found that less than 7% of South Africa's public health facilities perform abortions. It's estimated that more than half of the estimated, listen to this, 260,000 abortions that take place in South Africa every year are illegal. To discuss, we're joined by Jacques van Zuydam, who is the Chief Director for Population and Development in the Department of Social Development from Pretoria. Mr. van Zuydam, thank you for being with us. Given those stats that are incredible, is South Africa in a position to host an international conference on this issue?
Yes, I think in countries worldwide where abortion is accessible to women, access problems exist, and one of the reasons why we are involved with the conference and hosting the conference is to learn more about how does one address those access problems. On the one hand, there are health systems issues, and I think you've referred to some of them. But on the other hand, which is embedded in the theme of the conference, is the issue of what's referred to as reproductive justice, which basically refers to the societal factors that constrain access to abortion, even before approaching the health facility. So, for example, there is stigma attached to abortion. In all societies, patriarchy is prevalent, and patriarchal cultures tend to discourage women from seeking abortions. Particularly young women have great difficulty everywhere in the world where abortion services are available to actually access it. So the conference provides us with an opportunity to learn from experiences in different countries, as well as for countries like South Africa to share our successes and challenges with other countries where access is maybe more restricted, or where it's very difficult to access the service. So it's a learning experience, it's a sharing experience. It brings activists, practitioners, and governments from both developed and developing countries together, and we are quite sure that a lot of valuable lessons are going to be learned that would assist us to address the societal factors that surround abortion, stigma, and difficulty to access the service. The fact of the matter is, the statistics you've cited indicate how many women, and particularly young women, access the service from illegal providers, which often has consequences afterwards, which are quite devastating. And one has to understand, why is that? One cannot just sort of sit back and say, well, the service is there, and if you don't use it, it's your problem. One has to understand why are backstreet operators still in the market after we've really tried to eliminate them through the Act.
Well, can you give us more information? Because you're talking about societal factors, but this is a governmental obligation. Whether you think abortion is right or wrong, we as a country have decided that women have the right to choose it. How is this possible that only 7% of public health facilities even offer abortions? Is that correct?
Well, that's obviously one statistic. I do not have data from the Department of Health, but I do know that it is a matter that is being addressed within the Department of Health. But maybe if I can elaborate a bit more about what I refer to as societal factors, as you asked, is in our progress review of South Africa's population policy, which was published in 2015. there were quite a number of issues pertaining to sexual and reproductive health and rights that were identified, including, persistent high teenage pregnancy rates, including low or surprisingly lower than expected uptake of family planning and reproductive health services, for example, contraception and so on. So we dug into that and tried to understand, but if services are being rolled out, why are people not utilizing them? And we realized that a lot of the factors that were there before the 90s are still at play in society, which means one has to improve education, information, communication, access to knowledge, etc., to assist people to understand, on the one hand, what services there are, what their rights are to services, but at the same time, we are not denying that there are service delivery challenges, and those service delivery challenges obviously have to be addressed as well. One of the things that one comes across, and it has been found study after study, not only in our country but in other countries as well, is that you find people who maybe work in the health sector who have own personal views on something like termination of pregnancy, and then they do not service clients who come to the clinic or the hospital and request that service, or they turn them away, or they discourage them. So there are those things as well, which will also be discussed quite at length at the conference. The fact of the matter is, whilst we are saying sexual and reproductive health and rights, and the right to terminate a pregnancy is a right, that everybody in a society like South Africa has to enjoy. One also has to deal with the practical reality that for many people, these are sensitive issues, and a lot of that sensitivity emanates about a lack of information. A lot of it emanates from own beliefs as well, and that one has to find a way of how do you deliver the service in such a context and environment. It's not a uniquely South African problem.
It is a hard issue. Ethics are involved, but also hard practicalities. I guess for those who think that criminalizing abortion is the right thing to do, and this is an issue coming up all over the world, in America as well, will it or will it not drive more women basically, factually, to seek illegal abortions? They'll do it anyway.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what happened. That is what prompted the reforms in South Africa as well, was the fact that in throughout the years before the mid-90s, thousands of young women, poor young women, and essentially black young women went for backstreet abortions, and many suffered great complications and even died of it. Now that is something that nowhere in the world affects the middle class, because the middle class can access the service in another country. Like in South Africa, it was possible always for middle class white South Africans to access abortion services, especially in the UK, but also wherever they could afford a flight ticket to. So so we have that history. Our constitution that we adopted in 1996 entrenches two things that are central to the abortion debate. The one is bodily integrity, i.e. nobody can decide about my body on my behalf. My body is my own, and particularly that is important for women's bodies, because it is women's bodies that tend to be invaded, usually when one restricts things like abortion services. And the other thing that's entrenched in our country, of course, is reproductive rights, which in essence, is the right to decide when, how many, etc., children I will have, and both of these are fundamental, human rights. You know, if one does not entrench these rights, then you are not recognizing that men and women should be equal people in a society.
All right, sure, a hard topic. Many women still dying from those illegal abortions linked to abandonment as well. That will be the topic under discussion at Rhodes University from Sunday. And thank you very much. That was Jacques van Zuydam from the Department of Social Development.
Unions